Joining me tonight, Michael Knowles, author and host of the Michael Knowles Show on the newshour tonight. Thank you very much, Michael Knowles. Lovely to have you on the show. And just want to ask you, many people still recovering from the election results in the United States of America. Unexpected. Did the pollsters get it right? What really turned the tide for Donald Trump? All of these questions still doing the rounds. What do you think?
I think the pollsters didn't so much get it right or wrong as they hedged their bets. I think they were even a little bit cowardly because the race looked as though it were going to be terribly close. And then on election night, it was a complete blowout. It was a landslide for Trump, both in the Electoral College and in the popular vote. Something that perhaps some in the Indian audience will not know is that in America, we go out there and we vote. And while it looks like we're voting for the candidates, we're really voting for electors, and then the electors are apportioned by the states, and then the electors come together, and so there can be a discrepancy between the numbers that it actually takes to win the election and the number of votes cast. In America, a Republican had not won the popular vote in 20 years, and Donald Trump did that. He broke that up, so now the majority of Americans voted for Trump and the majority of the Electoral College. It was a complete landslide for the president, which I think is great news because we're almost certainly going to hold the House as Republicans. The Republicans have retaken the Senate. Republicans already have the Supreme Court because of President Trump's first term, and so Trump will be entering office with a mandate to govern and almost certainly with a unified government.
Well, but we're watching a sort of meltdown in the so-called left liberal ecosystem, many of whom are still trying to recover from result night yesterday. We saw elections in India fought on the issue of save the Constitution, and similarly the election in America was save the Constitution. To what do you attribute this meltdown of sorts?
Well, I think that the left in America believed that they had finally secured total power. You know, they've had a lot of institutional power for a long time, and they've become much more brazen. Generally in America, it's looked frowned upon to prosecute one's political enemies, to imprison one's political enemies, to try to kick political enemies off of the ballot. And yet Democrats tried to do all of those things in this election cycle. They even went so far as to call Trump an existential threat to the country, which justifies his assassination, which nearly took place, really clipped him in the ear one time, and then almost took him out a second time. So I think the Democrats were so brazen. They really thought that they had it. And then they didn't. It'd be one thing even if they lost in a tight election, but it wasn't even tight. They just got completely obliterated. So I think the reason they're melting down and screaming at the sky and rending their garments and gnashing their teeth is in part because they really believed lies. And they really believed lies because they heard them from the leftist establishment media in America. And so what you're seeing here is not only a crack-up of Democrat power in the political order, I think you're also seeing a crack-up of the establishment media, which is giving way, don't just take my word for it, the New York Times is admitting this, Washington Post is admitting this, it's giving way to podcasts, it's giving way to new media, it's giving way to streamers and people who have cracked up the leftist monopoly. And so looking down the line, 2028, 2032, 2036, I suspect that Democrats are going to have a lot of hard work to do if they want to recapture the political power that they thought they had.
But what do you make of Kamala Harris and what she said in her concession speech? She said, I will close with this only when it is dark enough. Can you see the stars? I know many people feel we are entering a dark time. Let us fill the sky with the light of billions and billions of stars, the light of truth, optimism, and service. Is this a repetitive trend that we're seeing, that everything is plunged into darkness?
Yes, of course, the sky is falling for Kamala Harris, but one had the impression that not even she believed it when she was saying that. And in fact, she contradicted all of that terrible rhetoric earlier on in the speech when she said, I know many people are going to be sad about the result, but just know it's going to be okay. And this was a scandalous line for many of us who have been listening to the Harris campaign and the Biden campaign before that, because the Biden-Harris campaign began with the premise that Donald Trump called Nazis, very fine people at Charlottesville years ago. It was a total lie. That President Trump is the second coming of Adolf Hitler, and that President Trump poses an existential threat to the country. So it was very odd to hear Kamala Harris, after all of that rhetoric, say, hey guys, it's okay that we just elected Hitler. It's good. Hey, it's okay that there's an existential threat to the republic. You thought, well, how is it? You just told us the country is going to completely collapse if this guy gets in. Now, by saying it's okay, really what Kamala is admitting is that she was lying, and the Democrats were lying, and Trump isn't going to destroy the country. And actually, what is most likely to happen is the economy is going to improve, immigration is going to be brought under control, foreign affairs are going to be brought back into order again after they totally spun out of control under Biden and Harris, and things are just going to return to normal, and that's what most people voted for. So when Kamala says, don't worry, it's going to be okay, she's half right. It's going to be okay. It's going to be better than okay. I think it's going to be great.
So let me ask you, what about those critics who say, oh my God, he's got cases against him and now he's in power. He's only going to, turn the verdicts in his favor. And, basically apocalypse people are talking about. What do you think about that?
Well, there's an update that actually just came in on the cases, which is that they're over. They're over now. The special prosecutor whom the Biden-Harris administration sicked on their enemy, Donald Trump, Jack Smith, he's just dropped the case into President Trump supposedly trying to overturn the 2020 election, which was preposterous. Democrats have denied the results of their election losses for decades at this point. President Trump tried to fight back through perfectly legal mechanisms, and they tried to throw him in prison for it. So those cases are going to go away. And that's a very good thing. There's an irony to the Democrats calling Trump an existential threat to the Constitution and the Republic, because one of the key aspects of our constitutional republic is that we don't really prosecute our presidents. We don't throw our opponents into jail. That happens in tin pot dictatorships in Latin America, or in banana republics, but it's really not supposed to happen here. And so it's true. Trump had promised that he would fire that special prosecutor, in his words, 2 seconds after entering office. He doesn't even have to wait that long. That is all over. That is good for our republic. It's good for our constitutional system. The critics can whine and cry. They'll try to throw him in prison probably the next time they have power. But for now, we are returning to constitutional norms. We're returning to a normal way of life. And I think that fact is what appealed to a lot of people.
So let me ask you, how do you think Trump will mark a radical departure from the policies pursued by Biden? Let's begin with the two wars in Ukraine and Middle East. Trump is someone who comes across as skeptical of multilateralism. How do you think he's going to approach this issue of wars?
Well, President Trump has said from the beginning that the war in Ukraine would not have kicked off if he had remained president after 2020. And I don't think he's just bragging or boasting. I think that's manifestly true. In fact, Vladimir Zelensky said much the same thing. He placed a lot of blame for the invasion on Joe Biden because Joe Biden weakened sanctions against Russia. President Trump put sanctions on Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Biden removed sanctions against Russia. And then Biden actually invited Vladimir Putin to invade. He said that if the invasion were only a minor incursion, then the consequences would not be dire. So, of course, Putin said, great, no consequences, I'm going to go on in. But you'll remember that President Trump, when he was in office, was able to bring us the Abraham Accords, which effectively brought us peace in the Middle East. And Donald Trump has been famous for a very long time. If you had told me 20 or 25 years ago that Donald Donald Trump, the reality TV star, the media mogul, the billionaire, would bring peace to the Middle East, I would have been very skeptical. But he actually did that. He brought all these people to the table. He shredded the Iran nuclear deal, which was really a disaster negotiated by the Obama administration, and he achieved that. Well, what happens 5 minutes after President Biden enters office? You get the outbreak of war in the Middle East, obviously after the October 7th attack on the state of Israel, then Israel's continuing war with Gaza. It looks like the Middle East is a tinderbox once again. I suspect that when Trump gets into office, all of those problems are going to go away. And they're going to go away for two simple reasons. One, President Trump pursues a policy of peace through strength, emphasis on strength. But two, President Trump is unpredictable. These feckless bureaucrats in the State Department, these rudderless politicians like Biden and Kamala Harris, they are, in fact, predictable. They just go along with the status quo. They don't have any real principles of their own. President Trump, he has principles, and he has courage, and he has a spine. There's a story that appears to be true, that one of the reasons Vladimir Putin did not further invade a country on Trump's watch, first time in 20 years, was because President Trump told him that if he did invade Ukraine, he would blow up Moscow. And was Trump bluffing? Was Trump being serious? Even if there were only a 5% chance that Trump would really do it, that's enough to keep the rest of the world behaving and acting politely. Same thing with North Korea. President Trump met with North Korea. When North Korea started to rattle its saber, Trump said that he has a big red button on his desk and the button's bigger and the button works. He effectively threatened Kim Jong-un with nuclear war. And guess what? Kim Jong-un started to behave. So I think President Trump's unpredictability, his obvious courage and courage under fire, we saw literally when Trump was nearly assassinated, and President Trump's principled strength in American foreign policy, I think all of that is going to clear up foreign policy problems almost immediately.
No wonder you're such a darling of the right wing and you have so many followers, because I'm sure the Trump supporters, the right wing nationalists, must be lapping up every word that you say. But let me ask you, Mr. Knowles, you do have strong views on issues such as same-sex marriage, but what many do fear is that there might be an erosion of civil liberties. For instance, the reversal of the Roe versus Wade judgment in 2022 on the part of judges who were appointed by Donald Trump while he was president has led many to question, is this conservatism going too far?
Well, I would say that fear is greatly misplaced because, even by the standards of, say, 2011, today's Republican Party is further to the left on many social issues than the Democrats were in 2011. President Trump's views of marriage, for instance, are much further to the left of Barack Obama's view when he was already president in 2011. So the left has clearly won a lot of ground. I think they're the extreme ones on the culture war. They're calling for abortion not even in the first days or weeks or even the first trimester of abortion, but abortion up until the moment of birth. Abortion, in some cases, after birth, which we ordinarily just call infanticide. Tim Walz, who was Kamala Harris's running mate, removed legal protections for babies who survive abortion and removed reporting requirements such that the babies could be left to die. I mean, this is extreme stuff. New York passed a similar law, changed the penal code such that if you murder a pregnant woman, it's no longer double homicide, it's only single homicide. We're talking extreme stuff, which I think the American people rejected at the ballot box. One social issue, though, that is on the table, I think, is this issue of transgenderism. I love India. I've traveled a bit in India. I've been to Varanasi. I've been to Thiruvananthapuram down in Kerala. And one thing I love about my Indian friends is they tend to be rather traditional and pretty normal, actually. But in the liberal West, there is an ideology that has taken hold in recent years that a man can just become a woman, that a man can secretly be a woman, or, this is even crazier, that a little kid, a 5-year-old or 6-year-old kid, might secretly be the opposite sex, and if so, teachers in schools should call that child by the pronouns of the opposite sex, should put that child on puberty blockers, should cause all sorts of medical problems for that child, bone problems, psychological problems, anxiety, depression, suicide, and in some cases even keep all of that information from the child's parents, and then allow big grown men to change, to strip naked in front of little girls in public pools. I mean, absolutely crazy stuff. I think that social issue very much cut in favor of Trump in this election. Many people who are liberal, who are leftist, would disagree with me on a lot of issues. They say that is just too far. That is absolutely crazy. And if the Democratic Party is going to lie to me on the meaning of the word woman, well, what are they not lying to me about? What else are they lying about? And so I think on that social issue, the Republicans have won a knockout victory, and I don't think the Democrats are going to be able to run on that much longer.
Well, yes, we are traditional people, but Gen Z in India as well, getting lots of ideas from social media and the internet. And our generation is also extremely insecure about this new conversation and lingo, as it's called, about what's your pronoun? Is it he, him, she, her, or is it they, their? That conversation is happening in Gen Z, even in India. So scary thought there for us as well. But let me ask you, Michael, what do you think about Trump's cabinet? Who do you think is going to get in there? I spoke with Vivek Ramaswamy when I was in the US in September, and he's quite a poster boy for Indians. Do you think he's going to make it? What are the other probables that you think?
Well, I certainly hope he does. Vivek is a personal friend of mine, and I think it would be great to have him in the administration. Although Vivek would also be great in other posts in the government, maybe as a U.S. senator, maybe as a governor. So Vivek is a complete superstar and has a bright future ahead of him. I also was thrilled to see J.D. Vance selected as the VP. I think he was a magnificent choice. I think he's going to be really, really helpful to President Trump. He already has been very helpful to President Trump. There's no shortage, though, of other people who can fill the administration. One problem that President Trump faced in 2016 was that he was an outsider from Washington. I think he'd only visited Washington about 17 times in his whole life before he became president. And so he didn't know a lot of people in national politics. Some of the people who decided to help fill his administration were not the best people, and they were booted out of the administration, often unceremoniously, and replaced with better people. Now, though, President Trump has been at this for almost a decade. So I think there are a lot of people, many people whose names you wouldn't even recognize, who could fill roles. Other people who have been floated for top administration posts are people like Marco Rubio. Mike Pompeo has come up, Rick Grinnell, all in the foreign policy area. Bobby Kennedy probably will be in charge either of the FDA or maybe, who knows, one of the health or food or agriculture aspects of the government. Tulsi Gabbard might have a role to play. That's another former Democrat who also, I believe, is of Indian descent, who has become a Republican now. And then many traditional conservatives. So I think that President Trump will have a lot better luck on personnel this time, but there's a major problem for him on personnel, which is that the federal government is gigantic, and the federal bureaucracy, I know India has an extensive bureaucracy too, but America's bureaucracy has really grown out of control. So usually American presidents replace about 4,000 to 5,000 people in the bureaucracy. That's just not enough. To really make a dent in national policy, Trump is going to have to replace probably 10 times that, 40,000 to 50,000 people. This is difficult because the Democrats have secured legal protections for many of these government workers. So even the President of the United States can't fire them. One way that he might be able to do that is to change their designation to what's called Schedule F, which makes them effectively political appointees and who will then be serving at the pleasure of the President. I think Trump is going to move to do that quickly because personnel is policy. And so we've got to get the very best people into these positions and allow them to carry out the agenda that the American people voted for.
What do you make about his special mention for Elon Musk at his victory speech?
I thought it was great. I actually attended the Madison Square Garden rally. It was one of maybe the most significant Trump rally that we've seen, other than his return to Butler, Pennsylvania, where he was nearly assassinated. Elon Musk also showed up there, spoke there. Elon is an aspirational figure. Elon is probably a great man of history. He is doing things that we just haven't really seen in our lifetimes. And his endorsement of Trump, it required a lot of courage. Because had Kamala won, Elon joked, he said, I would be in bad shape. He actually used a naughtier word than that. I'll clean it up for your show. And he would have been in bad shape. But he thought Trump had a chance, and he thought Trump was good for the country. Elon has put his money where our mouths are. He bought X, formerly Twitter, for $44 billion, and has given people who are non-leftists one social media platform on which to speak. The social media platforms had rigged the 2020 election in many ways in favor of Joe Biden by censoring information that conservatives were sharing, even privately. So that was all really great. But Elon's endorsement is also a sign of the times, because Elon is not a far right-wing conservative. Elon is kind of a liberal. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a liberal. Tulsi Gabbard is a liberal. These are Joe Rogan, who is probably the biggest podcaster in the world, is a liberal. But the political window has so shifted to the left, the Democrat Party is so shifted to the left, that the liberals today have more in common with the conservatives than they do with the leftists. And so Elon being there, I think he convinced a lot of people to vote for Trump. I think he's done a lot to help, but I think he's a sign of the times. If you are an even marginally sane person today in 2024, you're more likely a Republican.
Well, ironical, but true. In the end, I just want to ask you, Michael, there's so much in common between our Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, and Donald Trump. Have you had a chance to follow the trajectory, and what do you think of Modi?
Yes, I have. You know, one of my closest friends is Indian and a supporter of BJP and of Prime Minister Modi. And I remember before Modi was elected, my friend said, it's impossible. There's no way this guy gets elected. There's no way that a guy from his province with his background in his party, my friend said he thought BJP would never get the prime ministership ever in his lifetime. And then that all changed overnight. And I think regardless, even putting aside their similarly conservative right-wing political views, even the fact that these men have been so underestimated, the fact that their victories were so shocking, the fact that their victories have been so enduring. Modi has been in office for, what, 10 years now or something? I mean, it's really been a long time. It's been about 10 years since President Trump came down that golden escalator. I think that heralds or that augurs a real shift even in global politics. We see this in the West quite a lot. We see this with, the Brexit in the UK then anticipates the Trump election victory in America. You can see right-wing candidates, Le Pen in France, or Meloni in Italy, or Viktor Orban in Hungary. You see them start to crop up. But this is true even in the East, even now in the most populous country in the world, India. There's a line from Ronald Reagan, who said, when great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. That you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. And it does seem that there are forces in the world that go beyond petty partisan squabbles or even national issues. There is a global response to a liberalism, to a leftism that is insufficient, that is leaving people materially disadvantaged and spiritually disadvantaged. And the people are just not going to put up with that anymore. This liberal establishment has failed people in many ways, and so more popular conservative movements are going to crop up, whether that's in America or whether that's all the way over in India.
Well, absolutely, and that's the way it's going. Yes, it's been 10 years for Prime Minister Modi, and he's already been elected for another 5 years. So, and people are even comparing his age. They say, Trump is 78. Modi turns 78 in 29, which is when India goes into the next election. Who knows what's going to happen? But yes.
Well, I said when I was recently over in Kovalam Beach for a wedding, my friend bought me a Nehru jacket. I said, "Oh, this is a nice Nehru jacket to go over my kurta," and he said, "No, Michael, Now we call it a Modi jacket. This is the Modi jacket. Okay, Modi, he is the cultural figure. I said, okay, good. Now I've got a Modi jacket.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the way, the vibe has changed, and that's the way India is today. Well, voters have their own decisions in both countries, in America as in India, and they express their views. Once every 5 years in India and once every 4 years in America. And more power to democracy. Thank you very much, Michael Knowles, for joining me on this broadcast. And we hope to get you more often to talk to the Indian audiences.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It would be a great pleasure. I have a great affection for India. So any opportunity to come on and to celebrate these victories for conservatives and for just normal people asserting their traditional rights as citizens, I think is a wonderful thing. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Most welcome to come to India and be with us in our studios. Who knows, we can do a joint broadcast someday.
That would be great.